you have any questions, let me know.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So yes, I will turn this off. So welcome. Thanks for braving the humidity today. It's not the most comfortable place to be today, so thank you for coming. What you see here is the 1827 configuration of Fort Snelling. It was finished. The fort was finished 1825, but the schoolhouse behind me was built after that, as well as a couple of barns over here. So about 1827. This fort was actually built not as primarily as a military site. It was actually to regulate fur trapping, fur trading here. At that point, fur trading was just huge here. Europeans had a thirst for beaver pelts and muskrat pelts and fox pelts and anything else furry little. They loved their beaver hats and coats. So there were traders and trappers coming here. Trading was going on. So the military wanted to make sure everything was going the way it should have. That actually lasted from about the 1500s all the way up into about 1830, just after the fort opened. Then the market fell out of the fur trade because Europeans found that they wanted silk hats rather than beaver hats. So the price of some of the furs went down about 90%. So at that point, the military part of the fort moved into the forefront. This fort was built in a diamond shape for defensive purposes. We have bluffs, very good defensive position. At each corner, the north and south, there are batteries. We had 6, 12, and we actually had some 24-pound cannons. 24-pound cannon is extremely powerful. We also had a 24-pound cannon mounted behind the commander's house. You could shoot down the river a couple miles and you could obliterate whatever you're going for. But fortunately, there was never any formal military action here. After the Civil War, the walls went down and the fort expanded. From this frontier fort became a major military operation during World War I, World War II, on the upper post, which goes all the way over to Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport, about a 4-mile distance. It was 4 miles wide. It was an induction point. Several 100,000 men from the upper Midwest, either enlisted or drafted, came here to be processed. So they were here about five days, get their physicals, get their paperwork done, and then they were sent off to basic training. At any point during World War II, there were 10,000 men stationed here at Fort Snelling. After the war was over, 1946, the fort was decommissioned. And at that point, this became a residential neighborhood. There was a street running through here, and around the round tower, there was a streetcar. There was a streetcar stop here. There was a beauty salon in that building. These over here, back in here, there were actually people living here until the 1970s. Some of them were with Veterans Administration Hospital. Others were with the Minnesota Historical Society. long history. Yes.
So are the buildings the same, or any of them, or?
That's actually the next thing I was talking to. Thank you for the reminder. There are four buildings that remain from that first, from the 1827. The commander's house, the fanciest house for hundreds of miles, because the closest city at that point, St. Louis, took several hundred miles away. That's still, unfortunately it's closed for maintenance today, but hopefully you'll be able to come back and tour. It's big, high ceilings, formal dining room, kitchen underneath. I urge you to come back if you get a chance. One of the batteries, the South Battery, still original. The Round Tower, still original. And then one of the Barracks buildings is original. So we'll stay put for another minute here. Even though we're talking about a long history here, 1819, when the first construction crews came to site and started building the fort, the history of people being on the site goes back to the end of the last ice age, almost 10,000 years. There are archaeological evidence that suggests that there were tools being made here 6,000, 7,000 years ago. Projectiles like arrowheads 6,000, 7,000 years ago. At that point, most of the people were indigenous people, primarily Dakota people. Dakota people consider this area here, the confluence of the Mississippi and the Minnesota, they call it the Dote. That's Dakota for creation space and for confluence. Creation space, in Dakota people's beliefs, this is where the people were created. There was a special place here that the Dakota people were created and thrived, learned knowledge, and still today an extremely sacred place for the Dakota people. Fast forward to the late 1500s. We have missionaries. We have fair traders from France, along with Father Hennepin. Anybody here from surrounding area, Minneapolis, Hennepin County? Father Hennepin, that's the namesake. Came to explore. 1600s, more traders from France came to track furs, and they built relationships with the indigenous people. Later on, 1700s, Britain came here, did the same thing to get that fur trading. 1805, the United States enters the area. Zebulon Pike comes up to Mississippi, finds this beautiful place for a fort and fur trading activities. Signs a treaty where it's still kind of iffy whether or not it was actually a treaty, but he signed a document with 2 of the 7 Dakota leaders calling for a land purchase here and down on the St. Croix River. Zebulon Pike estimated the value of this area $200,000, and that's what he suggested Congress pay the Dakota. Congress paid them $2,000. So it's the start of some questionable relationships there. So this is a complicated place to talk about, because with all the highs, there are some lows. We have evidence that slavery occurred here between 1820 and the Civil War. We also have the relationships between the Dakota. At times, absolutely terrible. Down over the hill into the state park, into the Fort Snelling State Park, there was an internment camp, 1862. Men, older people, women, and children were kept there, held after the War of the Dakota War of 1862, and eventually put on steamers and sent out west to leave Minnesota. It's very complicated to talk about, but there's also the successes. We look at during World War II. This was the home of the Japanese American Language School. We have 10,000 Japanese Americans, mainly living out west in incarceration camps, coming here and learning more about the Japanese language, how to decode it, and how to communicate. the efforts, the military estimates that those efforts took 2 years off of World War II. And that happened here. 10,000 Japanese Americans coming, even though they were incarcerated at that point, coming here, serving their country, and saving hundreds of thousands of lives. So it's an amazing story. There's the good with the bad. Let's go ahead. If we stand up for a moment, we'll talk about what's back here really quickly, and we'll get back in the shade out front. We'll just walk over to here. I was talking about the South Battery. It is between the FAR building here and then the shop building. The FAR building. Does anyone have a guess how many stories that building is? What's that? It goes down. 4 stories. It's the tallest building here at the fort. It is the Commissary building, and it goes down the bluff. You actually walk out along there, the road goes down to the state park, and you can see how high it is.
What does that mean, common?
Storage. Yes, it was designed to hold up to 4 years worth of supplies. Because you're in the middle of nowhere, you're the most northwestern territory of the United States. So you need to keep, and the river is closed 3 months a year because it's really cold here. So you need a lot of supplies. Usually about a year's worth of supplies were kept there. And there's an elevator, there's a shaft with pulley system, steps. It was actually very sophisticated for the time. And those still are there. And you can actually go in and see those. Shops building, because you were out in the middle of nowhere at that point, you needed to be self-sufficient. We have a bakery that baked 450 loaves of bread a day. We have a forge. We also have a leather repair because you needed your shoes taken care of. We had an armor to take care of the guns. Over across here, this is where the guardhouse. We had a guardhouse. At that point, the guards served as your emergency medical services. Police, fire, ambulance. Everyone had a chance. It was a rotating thing. You stayed in there, full uniform, 24-hour reps. Then you have your jail. You have to have a jail. And then on the end is your timekeeper. Most soldiers could not afford a watch in the 1820s and 1830s. So there was an on-forge timekeeper. Used musicians. Anytime something had to be done, a musician would come out and play a different tune. I wish we could do that now. That'd be pretty fun. As I mentioned here, this is the schoolhouse, the original schoolhouse. This served as schoolhouse for about 20 years, and then it continued moving around the fort from here to the upper fort. Then the one that we're trying to use as our shade today, this is the original hospital building. You'll get a chance to go in and see bedrooms. You can see the dispensary, and there's a really cool discussion about medical technology starting from 1820s all the way up until the end of the World War II. There is one basement entrance down here. It's where probably the 2 most famous people at this fort lived. And you have to consider there was a president, Zachary Taylor, who served here for a while. The people we believe lived there was the Scotts, from Dred Scott and Harriet Scott, from the famous Supreme Court decision that actually added a lot of fire to the whole drive toward the Civil War. We do have an interpreter down there who will discuss more about the whole court case. They were here for 2 years. At that point, the belief was if a person who was enslaved came from the south coming up to the north, the person would be free. You can go more in depth down there. Let's go ahead and move to the other side. We'll quickly go through the building so we can get you out and explore. We'll start with the round tower. The round tower, you can see the edge there. You probably saw it coming in today. The round tower is the oldest, we believe, the oldest European-style building in Minnesota. It was the first thing. It was the first building built here at Fort Snelling. Mainly get a building up for security. So if something did happen, there was some place to stay. In front of the round tower is the powder battery. Capacity of 20,000 pounds of black powder.
Wow.
With that in mind, any kind of spark could have set that off, and we'd be sitting here talking about the crater at Fort Snelling. But with that in mind, no nails in that building, none in the floor, anything. It's double lined. It has a wood lining and then the mason lining. So if something did happen and it exploded, the explosion would go up, not out. And the roof is not connected, just for that case. So if it blew up, the roof would go up as well. Going over clockwise here, the white building back there is our barn for our artillery pieces. We have a 3-pound sitting outside, 6, 12, and 24-pound cannons inside the building. The well's in front here. The well kind of maybe worked sometimes if you were really lucky. So water was clean water was taken about a mile up in Cold Springs. Next building over, that's the sutler store. It's companion to it's similar to the modern PX. It was operated before Civil War. It was operated by a civilian who got a political knew somebody basically. Political appointment. Settlers could only make a profit of 25% on items. Still, when you're here 100 miles from any place, people going there to buy things, you can make a lot of money, and they did. Over here, this is one of the two barracks, enlisted barracks. We have the stone barracks and we have the wood barracks. Here at the end, we have a display with married couples and with enlisted people. 2 bunk beds in that room. 2 bunk beds equal 2 families. If you had 2 people in your family, you'd get 1 bunk bed. If you had 6 people in your family, you'd get 1 bunk bed. Discussion about if an enlisted soldier brought his family with, his wife would be required to do a job. Mostly, they would be laundresses. They could do laundry for up to 17 soldiers. That entailed laundry 3 times a week. They would have to wash probably in about 100 pieces per soldier per week, for a grand total of $8.50 a month. They were, of the enlisted people, they made more money, substantially more money than soldiers. We have a battery. We have some military. We have some military displays. Have some guns out there. Some uniforms. Going around here, we have the wood barracks. In the end, there are nicest bathrooms here, plus the cooling station. It's very cold in there. I've been there a couple times today. Like I said, this is the commander's house. Behind the commander's house, there is a nice patio area. You can still get a nice view of the river valley. It is very nice out there, so I would invite you to do that. Go there. Coming around, these are the officers' barracks. At the end, by the house, we have a display open as basically an apartment of the officers. And you can see the difference between how officers lived and how enlisted people lived. A big difference, because officers at this point, they were well-to-do, coming from the upper class, so they required nicer things, to say the least. Coming down, we also have an archaeology exhibit. Lots of archaeology here. When this was rebuilt, this fort was rebuilt, all the sites were dug out so we can get the correct alignment for the buildings. So that does our tour today. Any questions before we go off and explore? We do have staff members stationed all around. If you see chairs like this, don't hesitate to ask. We all try to be knowledgeable in everything here. Yes.
Okay. When did they make the Fort Snelling Chapel? When did that happen? Was that?
Okay, the Fort Snelling Chapel actually is DNR. It's a Department of Natural Resources.
Oh.
My I don't know a lot about it. My what I do know, around the turn of the 1900s.
After this.
It is decorated. It's beautiful inside.
Yeah,
The windows and such. I just don't know a lot about that because that's DNR.
So they did not have a church area then. Did they have church here, or
They did have church. It would be doubled. The school teacher after 1838, the school teacher was also required to be the chaplain, and they had services
That makes sense.
there. The chaplains usually were Episcopalian,
Okay.
because the leaders of the military were Episcopalian. So you hire who you know. But that later on, more and more belief systems were
Cool.
accommodated at that point. Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in to what extent this place was the frontier at the time.
Absolutely.
I know that they had already started moving into the Louisiana Purchase territories
Right.
in the Missouri area by the 20s, but yeah, I was wondering, like, what was the time frame? Because the United States actually owned Minnesota, I think, before it owned
That's
Iowa.
very good. We'll go into that. It's again, we'll go back to the treaty we're talking about in 1805. Those kind of continued until that point. There was a treaty in 1839 where the Dakotas ceded more land to the federal government. The big one, though, occurred in 1851, where basically the southern half of Minnesota was seceded over to the Dakota. No one was supposed to enter that area until 1854. Up until that point, there were predominantly more Dakota people here than Americans. At that point, it was almost like a starting gun. They signed it, rushed out and left basically a little sliver in the west part of the state as a reservation. So it was rapid. From just between 1851 to 1854, the number of Americans here quadrupled, even more just rushing out into here. But that's a very good point. It was up until 1850s, it was still predominantly Dakota people, and then by the middle of the 1860s, the Dakota people were basically shoved out of the state, and most of Dakota people still reside outside the state. It's an amazing story.
Your chapel soon celebrate 100
You can-
years of existence.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know when they started, but they were talking about that at a service 3 weeks ago.
100-year celebration.
Well, thank you for telling me that. That's like, I tell you the truth, I've been there a couple of times. One time it was closed, and the other time I went in, it's just beautiful. I know there's weddings still taking place there, and occasionally there is a funeral service.
They do a live telecast from there. Streams out every Sunday.
So
Oh, they do?
every Sunday you can hear the minister, the chaplain speak.
Really?
Chaplain.
I did not know that.
I live in Iowa, and I can get it down there.
So how many people usually go to the service?
About 100 or 140.
And 40 on the live stream.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I had no clue that was happening. Wow. There we go. Do you have a regular schedule when that's open? We do get asked about that.
For the chaplain?
Yeah, during the chapel.
Oh, this is where they slept.
I see. This is the bunk bed.
Oh, what do we have here? Ooh, look at this. This is where the soldier sleeps. There's the cat. Bunk bed. Here's the bed. Here are the bunk beds. What do we see in here? You guys, you still have bunk beds? Oh, look at, there's a soldier in here. Wow, dude. What are you doing here, mister? How's it going today? Ah, pretty good. A little hot today? Okay, here's the other beds. These aren't bunk beds. Keep going on the circle. See anything in there? Oh, yeah. Oh. Shoot it. Cannon boy. You look serious. Well, they're going to tell us when we go to the show that you put this down the barrel to clean it out. Ooh, there's another cannon. They got a lot of cannons, don't they? it's not for seeing, so yes, it is. What do you see? People thought it was a real dog at first. Oh my gosh, that was a real dog.
I'm gonna be back in about 5 minutes for your break.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you want any ice?
Don't need any, thanks.
All right.
Okay, let's keep our movement. Oh, guess who this is? This is Samantha. Going on a circle. Morgan, oh, we were already in here. That is where we are. And when they dug in the ground, look what they found. They found bottles. These are the bricks that were there. Look at that glass, it's pretty. Okay, we still have to do our selfie. We gotta get a good selfie.
And then we can go to Roscoe. What is that? Guys, come here. I saw that before. Kyle Pearson got bitten by it. Really painful. Yeah. Pepsi used to get bitten by it.
Fort Snelling. Apparently at the time, it was the second healthiest and most sanitary hospital in the entire U.S. Second only to West Point, did you know?
Thank you.
I've just got a little timeline here of how medicine has progressed since the fort was first built, all the way up to its last few years of service in the Second World War. Welcome, guys, to the hospital.
This is the hospital.
Where I can see to all of your medical needs.
Yes, we just found out about that. What is that saw for?
This here is called a bone saw. Do you know what I might use a bone saw for?
Cut your bone, huh?
You'd be surprised how few people get that the first time around.
Wow. What? Oh, here you go.
You keep doing that, you might actually need to see some medical treatment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, but it doesn't look very appealing.
It's not. Trust me. Tell you what. You guys been to the dentist so far this year?
Yes.
Have any of you guys had any bad cavities just yet?
You get it.
I lost you too.
You lost the tooth? Alright. Well, have you guys been keeping up on brushing your teeth? Have you? Have you? What if you did? Well, if you didn't, and one of your teeth ended up rotten, say that cavity gets worse, be angry. What's going to happen is the surgeon, the guy in charge of all this, he's the doctor and the dentist and the lawyer. He'll sit you down there. He'll open up your mouth, find that rotten tooth, wrap this little guy around that back.
Hello.
Hey,
How we doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Arguably the most important space in the entire fort. Arguably the most important space in the entirety of Minnesota here. This space, at least we believe, with very good evidence though, is the space where Drake and Harriet Scott stayed during their time here at Fort Snelling. The time here they spent at Fort Snelling was not only time that they spent here enslaved, but it was also what would ultimately become the evidence that they would produce for their famous lawsuit for their emancipation.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Not a problem. Do you have any questions at all?
Not at the moment. Just kind of looking around.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it, though.
Hi. Excuse me.
Thank you.
That's so beautiful.
Picture down the hole.
No, like down there.
Picture down the hole.
It's so deep.
Almost
It's so
looking down the hole.
That's so.
Okay, so we saw the keg house now.
What's that?
One more door and we're out of here.
Wait, what's down here? I want to see.
That's going down to where all that keg goes.
That's where all the snakes live.
The little kegs are those round things.
Around.
live long after the Civil War to see a free nation.
Come on over.